Snow scribbles across the morning while buses exhale at the corner, and the river wind lashes faces into hurry. Marcus thinks about coffee he cannot afford, and the weight of his boots that are not boots, only split leather pretending. He keeps his gaze low because eye contact opens doors he cannot walk through. A boy laughs. A dog yanks. A woman adjusts earbuds and skirts wide. Marcus whispers that he is not a ghost. His breath makes a small cloud that believes him. Alina stops because the lens around her neck thumps once, a reminder, and she kneels beside him without asking permission. Alina tells him her name and says the cold bites harder when no one says your name back. Marcus says his name quietly and watches it warm the air. Alina presses a hand warmer into his palm and asks if he has eaten. Marcus answers that the city served him a menu of wind. A man mutters that they will never learn. Alina looks up and says the city will. Marcus feels the ground tilt toward possibility. Alina tells Marcus that her mother worries about strangers and weather and grades in that order, yet she cannot walk past a person freezing to protect a curve on a report card. Marcus says he once guarded men who guarded maps that guarded nothing. A bus driver leans on the horn and the world shudders. Alina asks where he sleeps. Marcus jokes about a hotel called Under the Bridge with unlimited stars and a stern concierge named Wind. Alina laughs because the joke deserves one, then admits she has $10 left for lunch. Marcus says $10 is a feast when you share it. They stand. She steadies him, and a man opening the cafe door watches the exchange like a show he did not pay for. Marcus says he used to play music. Alina says she plays second clarinet, which is music if you love it enough. He smiles for real, and the city looks almost different. Inside, heat blooms like a remembered song. The barista asks if they want to sit and does not look at anyone else for permission. Alina orders 1 bowl of soup, 2 spoons, and a coffee that she sweetens until it tastes like courage. Marcus says he cannot pay, and the barista answers that she did not ask him to. A man at the counter clears his throat and stares at his phone. Alina photographs steam because someday she will need proof warmth existed. Marcus speaks quietly about Kells, who played harmonica in a barracks while rain stapled sheets of sound to the roof. He says the music kept them alive until it did not. Alina tells him that sometimes bands only need a conductor to start again. Marcus laughs so softly the spoon trembles. They eat, both pretending not to notice how fast he finishes. They step back into the brittle afternoon and the wind shouts again. Mr. Patel from the corner shop gestures with his chin, asking if that man is trouble. Alina says he is a veteran and a neighbor, and she asks for a pair of thick socks on credit. Mr. Patel frowns at the idea of credit with teenagers and strangers, then remembers the winter his own father arrived with 1 suitcase and 2 cold feet. He brings wool socks and a small bottle of petroleum jelly. Marcus thanks him using the man's name because Alina said it out loud where others could hear. Mr. Patel waves it away, embarrassed by his own heart. Marcus sits to change socks, wincing as skin lifts like old paint. Alina averts her eyes without looking away. Marcus says this is the worst part. Alina answers that the worst part already happened when everyone decided not to look. When Alina checks the time, school grinds back into her story like gears. She tells Marcus she has to run, but will come tomorrow with thicker gloves and a plan she has not invented yet. Marcus says plans are bridges you build midair, and he will be here unless the wind promotes him to somewhere else. Alina writes her first name and a number on his notebook page under Kells. She asks permission before tearing a photograph from her camera, a black and white of the steam rising from soup, and tucks it between the pages, a promise that warmth leaves evidence. Marcus says he has not been expected anywhere in a long time. Alina tells him to expect her. As she jogs toward the L, the city sounds like it always has, yet Marcus hears a note threaded through it. A clarinet, finding tune in cold air. Morning inks the kitchen with tired blue, and the kettle complains in little bursts. Alina tells G1 that she met a veteran, and that his name is Marcus, and that names are warmer than blankets. G1 answers that warmth also comes from keeping your distance when the world is not safe. G1 says she changed dressings at 3 in the morning and saw frostbite where toes should be, and she fears hazards that smile. Alina says a hazard that smiles is loneliness, and that she is careful in a way that is not afraid. G1 imagines headlines and doors she cannot lock against chance. She says they came to this country using silence like armor, and she cannot spend what little they have on risks she does not understand. Alina shows the photograph of soup steam and says, "This is not risk. This is a promise." G1 studies the image, then asks if promises feed people. Alina says sometimes they do, and today she plans to prove it. The school hallway rings with lockers and bravado that smells like deodorant and fear. A boy tells another boy that Alina has adopted a mascot, and someone laughs because kindness is easier to mock than to practice. Alina walks through it toward the band room. Mr. Patel's socks ride in her backpack next to a spare thermos, and a list Rosa texted that says call this number 3 times, even when it does not answer. Maya from Clarinets asks if Alina is starting a club. Alina says yes, it is a club for refusing to step over people. Maya says the Balaws will be short. Coach breezes by and says there are safe ways to volunteer, and Alina says the sidewalk is not unsafe when people stand together. At practice, the conductor taps his baton and Alina misses the entrance because she is thinking about a man who timed his breath to trains. The conductor gently says, "Music is a promise kept on the beat." Alina nods and plans a better rhythm. By noon, the river wind sharpens like a reprimand. Marcus sits where the sidewalk hums with footsteps that do not slow. He tries to read his own handwriting and hears the convoy that taught his ears to mistrust quiet. A bus brake exhales, and his body answers with an old flinch. A woman drops coins and does not meet his gaze. He wants to tell her that once he knew the exact weight of a turret and the warm smell of motor pool grease, that he carried jokes like ration bars. The L screams above, and the color drains from the day. He places a palm over the harmonica as if it could steady time. A kid in a puffer jacket shouts, and for a breath, the street becomes a doorway that blew inward, light turning to dust. Marcus whispers Kells into the cold. The name a rope. Rosa arrives with caldo, and a throat that holds patience like a lantern, and he returns to the afternoon one swallow at a time. Rosa says his name the way good medics say a pulse. Rosa tells Marcus that she found Daniel at the VA, who owes her 3 favors and 1 apology. And there is a slot if the form finds the right desk. Marcus says forms do not like men who have slept outside because addresses embarrass them. Rosa says addresses can be borrowed while we build one that fits. She asks permission to photograph his ID, and he nods after the pause that fear requires. She calls the number and waits through a hold music that pretends to be ocean. Daniel answers with a tired cheerfulness and asks for the same data 3 ways. Marcus recites dates that feel like rooms he left long ago. Alina arrives mid-call with a thermos and a smile that bows but does not bend. Rosa points to the phone and mouths progress. Marcus listens to Daniel say Tuesday, and the word feels like a small bridge made of calendar squares. Evening turns the street the color of old pewter. G1 waits near the corner shop, hands inside her sleeves, eyes scanning for the daughter who measures days in errands of the heart. When she sees Alina with Marcus and Rosa, she feels her pulse climb a ladder of caution. Mr. Patel steps out with a sack of bread ends and says the birds can share or the soup can't. Alina introduces everyone as if this were normal, and maybe it is becoming so. G1 bows slightly to Marcus and says that the hospital has a closet where lost coats go to be remembered, and one might remember him. Marcus straightens as if a uniform has been mentioned. He thanks her using her name and says that he will try not to be trouble. G1 says trouble is what we are when we do not ask. They stand in the sodium glow, a brief and awkward constellation, and the cold seems to blink first. Saturday wakes with light like thin tea and sidewalks that crunch under new frost. Alina gathers 3 classmates outside the band room and says they will bring hot sandwiches, socks, and a way to be seen. Maya says they will also bring clipboards because adults respect paper. Jamal from percussion says he knows a barber who charges kindness rates when the story is right. Priya from student council says she can mobilize a bake table that would overthrow a small government. They walk to the corner shop with backpacks thudding. Mr. Patel eyes the cluster and says he runs a market, not a crusade. Alina answers that markets feed crusades all the time and this one pays cash. Marcus waits by the L pillar, posture balanced between hope and retreat. Alina says that today they will map the block so it stops forgetting him. Marcus laughs and says that maps are honest when people are. Rosa arrives with a stack of consent forms and a grin that means the first door just opened. Jamal leads them to the barber shop where jazz hums like a radiator. The owner introduces himself as Theo and says his clippers do better work when stories are told straight. Marcus says he used to cut hair on base when boredom grew like weeds. Theo chuckles and tells him to take the throne. Alina asks if throne is what the chair is called, and Theo says it is when a man sits down to meet himself again. Rosa checks the mirror angle so Marcus can choose the version he wants to keep. Marcus says keep the gray because he earned it, and lose the winter that got stuck to his jaw. Jamal taps a beat on his thigh and Maya reads the flyers for open mics aloud like the town crier. Theo works quiet, hands sure, and the years soften their grip. Alina watches a face emerge that looks like someone you would ask directions from. Marcus touches his cheek and says the wind will have to learn a new map. After the haircut, they walk to a library where heat smells like cracked book spines. Rosa says a landline works better than the wind and sets up at a quiet table. Marcus flips his field notebook to a page labeled Sister and writes a number he has avoided for 6 winters. Alina asks whether he wants them to step away. Marcus says stay until the ringing stops sounding like artillery. The call routes through a voice that says this customer is unavailable, and then offers a chance to leave words. Marcus says this is Marcus who once broke your Walkman and swore to fix it, who promised to call before Mom's birthday, and then learned to sleep standing up. He says he is almost ready to come for Sunday soup, if she can forgive a route that took too long. The machine cuts off at the tone. Silence spreads like spilled ink. Alina says the message was a bridge. Rosa says bridges hold more than we think. Marcus nods and writes Tuesday twice. The afternoon hardens to evening and the temperature drops like a curtain. Alina and her small crew set up near the corner shop with a folding table, a dented kettle, and a handmade sign that reads Winter Band-Aid. Mr. Patel brings out an extension cord, like a peace offering in G1, arrives on her dinner break with a hospital coat that needs a new name. Maya hands socks to a man with a cart who starts crying because they are thick and new. Jamal pours cocoa for 2 teenagers who pretend indifference until their hands thaw. Priya counts bills and says they could fund a night in a motel if they stretch. Marcus stands behind the line and asks a woman if she wants the cup with the lid that does not leak. Alina hears someone mutter that this is a nuisance, and she answers that nuisance is another word for change. The mutterer shrugs and takes a muffin. The table becomes a hearth planted on concrete. Later, the block exhales. The table packs down to a rectangle of damp circles where cups stood. Alina and Marcus sit on the shop stoop as the train thrums above like a metronome. Alina says the clarinet section has a winter concert in 2 weeks, and a piece that begins with a single held note. Marcus says he knows about held notes because he survived by stretching one breath across a bad night. He pulls the harmonica from his pocket and turns it in his hands as if reading it for instructions. Jamal says the street has a key if you listen long enough. Marcus brings the metal to his lips and shapes a quiet tone that carries farther than it should. G1 steps to the doorway and freezes because the sound unknots something she has been holding between her shoulders. Alina records a few seconds and says the school needs this color. Marcus says maybe the city does too. The second note is stronger. Tuesday arrives in a gray coat that smells like old rain. Rosa shepherds Marcus through the VA doors, while Alina trails, clutching her clarinet case, like a talisman. She forgot to leave at school. A television in the waiting room shows waves that never touch shore. Daniel appears with a badge, and the kind of smile that keeps running even when his legs do not. He says they need Marcus's DD. 214, the paper that proves a person's sacrifice to a system that misplaces sacrifices. Marcus says it lived in a backpack that did not survive a February. Daniel says there are other routes. Slower, but real. A man in a Cubs hat coughs and mutters about lines that last longer than wars. Alina asks what comes before slow, and Daniel says fingerprints and patience. Marcus signs forms while his hand trembles, the ink pooling like weather. Rosa narrates each line softly, turning bureaucracy into a series of small doors. The printer jams, laughs at them, then relents. Daniel circles Thursday in red and calls it a promise he intends to keep. The fingerprint station smells like lemon cleaner and anxiety. A technician powders Marcus' hands with respect, warning about the machine's stubbornness. The scanner hiccups on his scarred thumb, and the past flashes in impatient green. Marcus says the line on that print came from a door that opened wrong in another country at noon. The tech nods the way people nod when they do not have tools for stories. Daniel apologizes for the system as if he built it. Alina asks if fingerprints can remember music. Daniel laughs and says if they do, the database will be better for it. Rosa tells Marcus that databases are just rooms where people forget to leave the windows open, and she is good with windows. The machine finally accepts his hands like a wary host. Marcus watches his identity render in thin black ridges, a map he cannot read but recognizes. The technician presses submit. A status bar crawls east, then stalls, then completes. Daniel says now we wait, and Rosa says waiting means we plan. Thursday turns white and mean. Wind slams trash can lids like cymbals as Alina and Marcus approach the benefits desk. Daniel is late because the train decided to count every bolt in the city. A clerk with neat hair says, there is a discrepancy between two systems, like a marriage that stops speaking. One lists Marcus as discharged honorable. Another lists missing records as if his years evaporated. Marcus stands very still, as if movement would erase him further. Alina says there must be a person in this building who can pick one truth and hold it. Rosa arrives trailing melted snow, and an argument she is ready to have. Daniel skids in, breathless, and says he is that person today. He calls 3 offices, uses words that open doors, then apologizes between sentences. Marcus feels the old anger rise, heat under the frost, the one that kept him alive and keeps him far. He breathes with Alina's count. 4 in, 4 out. Until Daniel hangs up and says provisional approval, voucher for temporary housing, next steps tomorrow. The snow eases like a held note released. They celebrate with diner coffee that tastes like determination. Marcus studies the voucher, as if it might fade in steam. Alina plans the move like a heist: socks, notebook, harmonica, and the photo of soup. Rosa says the motel is 3 bus stops away and safer than sidewalks, but not a promise built to last. Daniel admits that vouchers expire quicker than hope. A siren yawls outside, and Marcus flinches so hard, the cup sloshes. The sound folds the room into a different city with a sun that burned white. Alina places her palm on the table where his hand can find it without choosing. He does. G1 arrives in scrubs, hair damp from snow, saying she has 10 minutes and a coat from the hospital closet that believes in second chances. She wraps it around Marcus's shoulders with the authority of a nurse who knows cold's dirty tricks. He says he does not deserve this much help. G1 says deserving is a word for accountants. Tonight is triage. He nods and lets the coat claim him. Night slips its hands around the city. The motel sign sputters and glows like a tired heartbeat. Rosa negotiates at the front desk while Daniel faxes what his email swore would suffice. Alina walks Marcus to a room with a door that shuts and a heater that sounds like distant surf. He freezes at the threshold. He says closed rooms have taught him mixed lessons. Alina props the door with her clarinet case and says they can teach it a new one together. Inside, the bed looks like a hill after a snowfall, perfectly undisturbed. Marcus sets the notebook on the nightstand as if placing a stone. Alina leaves a thermos and says she will return at 8 with breakfast sandwiches. Rosa returns with a keycard and a look that says victory with an asterisk. Daniel signs off and promises a follow-up that he will wrestle into existence. Hours later, Alina cannot sleep. She pulls on boots and checks the motel again. She finds Marcus sitting on the curb in the dark room light behind him, breathing the night like he is learning its language. He says he will go back in now. Alina sits beside him until he does. Morning loosens from gray to pearl as Rosa knocks on the motel door with a clipboard that finally looks like good news. She tells Marcus that a transitional studio opened on Halstead, 4 months guaranteed if he shows up and signs everything neatly, and maybe longer if the case notes say. Daniel arrives behind her with coffee and a grin that keeps apologizing for how long this took. Alina stands in the doorway with a tote labeled kitchen inside a skillet that once belonged to G1's first apartment. Marcus lifts the skillet like an oath and says he will cook eggs that do not taste like wind. The room feels lighter than last night's fear. They ride the bus past glass towers that pretend to be calm. Marcus watches the city as if it is a score he might one day conduct. When they reach the building, a tired manager named Ms. Kelly hands him a key. Alina says keys can be instruments if you listen. Marcus says he is listening, and the lock answers with a soft click. The studio smells like primer and new beginnings. A single window stares at a brick wall the color of dried blood. Rosa narrates the rules: quiet hours, mail pickup, weekly check-ins, while Marcus places objects carefully as if setting Sentry's notebook on the sill, harmonica on the dresser, the soup photograph on the fridge with a weak magnet that refuses to quit. Alina runs water until the pipes stop coughing. G1 arrives with a basket of groceries that look like a syllabus for recovery. Marcus jokes about kale having too much rank, and G1 says Greens forgive slander. When they leave to fetch a blanket, the room tenses with silence. Evening breathes in through the single pane and a siren scratches at old doors. Marcus sits on the floor, back to the bed, battling a hunger that has nothing to do with food. He stands, opens the hallway, and disappears into the cold for an hour that grows heavy. Alina returns and finds the key on the dresser. She sits on the floor to wait, counting breaths 4 in, 4 out, refusing to call it a relapse, calling it a storm that will pass. Marcus returns with night stitched to his shoulders. He smells like wind, not like the bottle he did not buy, and his eyes carry the kind of shame that asks not to be named. Alina tells him he did not vanish, he went for air, and the room was here when he came back because rooms can learn patience. Marcus says he reached the river and watched ice flow like broken orders. He says he wanted the noise to stop, and then he heard Kells laugh the way he laughed when someone played too close to the beat. G1 unwraps the blanket and tucks it around the bed without touching him. A nurse ceremony. Rosa arrives, called by no alarm, only intuition, and sits on the floor beside Alina. Daniel texts that the permanent housing list added Marcus with a verified status, a phrase that feels like the opposite of invisible. Marcus rests the harmonica on his chest and asks whether you can teach a room to echo music instead of fear. Alina says yes, and she chooses a note to hold until his breathing matches. Days fold into a rhythm of small victories. Marcus meets Ms. Kelly's check-ins with punctuality that startles even him. He memorizes the bus route to the clinic and learns the desk clerk's joke about Mondays. Alina persuades her band director to let Marcus visit rehearsal, not to speak yet, only to listen. When he steps into the music room, brass bright as planets, the air changes key. Teenagers stiffen, then loosen as Maya says, "This is our neighbor who knows about held breaths." Marcus sits in the back and counts silently with the baton taps. Jamal offers a nod that feels like a coin pressed into palm. During break, Marcus lifts the harmonica and plays a thin ribbon of melody that threads between stands. The room quiets as if someone remembered a name. The conductor asks whether he would like to say a word. Marcus says maybe later, and the later does not feel like never. Outside, he tells Alina the sound in that room felt like cover he has not had since the worst noon. A week later, Daniel calls with the sentence people rehearse in Dreams unit available. Supportive housing, inspection passed, move-in Friday. The word Friday lands like a chord. Marcus signs papers with a hand that hardly shakes. The new place is small and bright, a fifth-floor studio with a view of a slice of river that learns to glitter when the sun remembers. On the first night, he and Alina bring in a thrift store lamp and a second-hand speaker. He places the photograph of Soup on a bookshelf and sets the harmonica beside it, as if placing family. He stands at the window and calls his sister again. This time, a human voice answers with his name shaped carefully. They do not fix history in one call, but the bridge holds. After, he records a short melody on Alina's phone for her winter concert prelude. He titles it, "Do Not Step Over People." She laughs and then cries and then laughs again, which is exactly the right order. March drips through the gutters, softening Chicago's edges. Marcus walks the river path, hands bare for the first time in months, and listens to the city breathe without flinching. His steps match the rhythm of traffic rather than war. He stops by a mural painted under the bridge, faces of veterans fading into sky, and recognizes himself in the half-finished corner. Alina finds him there after school, camera ready. She says she's collecting footage for the concert montage, and he laughs that he's become bi-roll. Alina says no, he's the bridge. He tells her about Kells again, this time smiling when he says the name. She asks what he would tell Kells now if he could. Marcus says that maybe peace doesn't mean forgetting the noise. It means learning the rest of the song. A train roars overhead, and they stand silent until the sound fades to river hum. Alina says that next week she wants him to play with them. Marcus says he will, but only if she promises to conduct. That night, Alina's father returns from a trip, an accountant who counts everything, including risk. He asks G1 why their daughter spends nights downtown with strangers. G1 says the stranger is not a stranger anymore. Alina waits at the doorway, shoulders squared like her mother's when she faces difficult patients. Her father says good people still fall, and she says fallen does not mean gone. He asks whether the veteran saved her grades. Alina says he saved her eyesight, the part that sees people. G1 stands between them like a conductor, calming dissonance, saying that kindness is also math risk times heart divided by fear. Her husband sighs, rubs his eyes, and mutters that the world will hurt her. G1 answers softly that the world already tried. Alina steps forward and hugs him before he can reply. The silence that follows isn't victory or defeat. It's the overture to understanding. Marcus sits at his new desk under a window open to cautious air. He begins a letter he's rehearsed for years, to the mother of Kells Moore. He writes about convoy dust, about jokes traded for courage, about the day light cracked wrong and left him in pieces. He writes that Kells laughed like brass and taught him that surviving isn't selfish. He tells her he tried to live quiet, but a girl with a red hat and a clarinet refused to let silence finish the story. When he signs his name, his hand does not tremble. He seals the envelope, addresses it in slow, careful script, and presses it flat with both palms as if grounding a heartbeat. Outside, the river keeps its promise and moves forward. The post box clanks shut on the letter with a sound like punctuation at last. Spring concert day. The gym glows with borrowed lights and the scent of waxed floors. Alina wears black dress code with a red ribbon at her wrist. The band director introduces a guest musician who rebuilt his instrument from memory. Marcus steps onto the riser in a charcoal suit. Daniel insisted on renting. Students whisper until Alina lifts her baton. The first piece begins with clarinets threading a thin, steady note. Then Marcus' harmonica joins, mournful and clean, folding wind into wood. The audience leans forward, breaths synchronized. When they finish, the silence is thicker than applause. Then the clapping breaks, long and uneven, like rain finding rhythm. Alina bows toward Marcus. Marcus bows toward her. G1 records from the bleachers, tears catching light. Daniel and Rosa clap until their hands sting. Outside, snowmelt drips from gutters, and the city exhales its own standing ovation. After the concert, they gather beneath the L where everything began. The city is damp but gentle. Mr. Patel closes his shop, late to bring samosas. Rosa brings her thermos of caldo. Daniel forgets his tie and doesn't care. Marcus lifts the harmonica once more, playing not a song of loss, but of return. Alina films until the battery dies, then simply listens. G1 laughs softly and says the world might still hurt them, but tonight it missed. Marcus thanks each by name and finally thanks himself, whispering that survival is also a kindness. He looks up at the beams, now streaked with light instead of snow, and says to Alina that everyone passes the bridge twice, once invisible, once seen. The train roars overhead and drowns the rest, but they hear enough. The following autumn, the city wears gold, like forgiveness. Marcus stands before a mirror in his small apartment, adjusting a tie Alina helped him choose. He rehearses the speech he never thought he'd give, to the same high school where he once sat, invisible on the curb. The harmonica waits on the table, beside a folded note addressed to M's. Alina Park, my conductor. Outside, Rosa honks from her car, Daniel texting final reminders, G1 promising front row seats. Marcus looks at his reflection, lines softened, eyes steady, and says aloud that some wars end when someone calls your name kindly enough. He pockets the harmonica and the letter, straightens his shoulders and steps into sunlight. The air smells like roasted chestnuts and second chances. The school auditorium hums like a hive before a curtain. Students file in wearing black in nervous hope. Alina paces backstage, now 17, her red beanie replaced by a headband of confidence. The banner reads, Veterans Week Stories of Service and Song. The principal introduces Marcus as AA, neighbor, musician, and hero of resilience. He walks on stage to applause that rises like a tide. He begins without notes, saying that once he guarded gates abroad and now he guards names. He tells them about Kells, about sleeping by the river, about a teenager who refused to step over a man everyone thought was gone. He says healing sounds like practice. Slow, steady, never perfect. When he finishes, silence reigns for a heartbeat, then applause erupts, full and clean. Alina wipes her eyes and whispers, Encore! After the ceremony, Marcus steps outside into crisp sunlight. Students surround him for autographs, selfies, and stories. He laughs, shy but steady, as Maya asks whether he'll play for them again. Marcus says music belongs to everyone who listens with care. Jamal hands him a pair of drumsticks, saying they're lucky. Marcus pockets one, gives the other to Alina. G1 introduces herself to a teacher as the mother of the girl who refused to walk by. Daniel stands aside, pride quiet in his smile. Rosa leans against a railing, calling out that her caseload has never been happier. The band director shakes Marcus's hand and invites him to conduct the spring concert. Marcus says he will if Alina helps pick the piece. The sun angles through the L tracks, scattering gold coins of light around them. For once, no one rushes past. Evening settles over the river. Marcus walks alone, letter from Mrs. Moore in his pocket. It arrived that morning, a page of gratitude written in a mother's trembling hand. She said Kells would have been proud that the music reached her porch through wind she can't explain. Marcus leans on the railing, eyes tracing water that no longer looks like escape, but like continuity. He lifts the harmonica and plays softly, letting the sound ripple between bridges. For a moment, he sees Kells beside him, young, laughing, untouched by dust, and instead of grief, he feels permission. The note drifts upward, catches the last light, and fades. Behind him, Alina's voice calls that the city is waiting for its encore. Marcus smiles and says the encore is hers now. Winter returns softly, this time without cruelty. A street near the corner shop bears a new mural, painted by Alina and her classmates, showing Marcus on the stoop beneath the words, "Do not step over people." The colors pulse even under cloud light. Marcus, now working part-time at the VA as a peer counselor, stops by each morning with coffee for Mr. Patel. G1 and her husband wave from across the street. Rosa's thermos still travels block to block, now lighter because help arrives sooner. Daniel sends updates about veterans whose names no longer vanish in the system. One afternoon, Alina joins Marcus on the stoop, now freshly painted. She asks if he misses the bridge. He says no. The bridge learned to walk. They sit in companionable quiet as snow begins again, falling gently on a world that for once doesn't look away.